Why, hello, everybody. This is Eric Vierthaler of Vierthaler Studios back again for the next episode of Sit Down by the Fire. I'm here with my co host, Ty from Junebug Films. We're here with our next special guest. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Eric. Hi, Ty. Thank you so much for having me on your fireside chat. My name is Mary Riitano, and I am an actress based in Montana.
But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And also, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be here.
You're welcome. I'm honored and excited.
Yeah, definitely. Of course, anytime. So how about that you tell the audience what exactly started your journey getting into the movie industry?
Wow, that's a long and meandering answer,
All right.
but I'm happy to share. Actually, for me, I believe my earliest introduction to acting came when I was in third grade, and I was in a school play. And I had to play the mom of these kids who was trying to get them to go to bed before Santa Claus came down the chimney. And Santa Claus at the time was being played by a classmate, Matt, who I thought was just adorable. And I had to go over and kiss him on the cheek during at one point. And the kids see the masks slip down, like, oh, it's really Dad. It was much to my mortification that, I had to kiss somebody I had a crush on. I think at that time, though, I realized there was something that ignited in me that I couldn't put a name to. And looking back on those young years, I would say that I ignited my joy of being. And where I was in third grade was in a small town in a very poor financial quality environment. My parents were great. They were just in places that didn't bring in a lot of income. So there was a lot of survival living going on at that time in my life. And the arts, as I know them now, was not a language. So in those young years, it felt like to me that I would get opportunities in school and I would be joyfully gusto in it. And then I would like fade and joyfully gusto. I took some small parts in school plays. I started piano lessons, and I just never seemed to hold on to being an artist at that time in my life because there was a lot of chaos growing up. And now I realize there's a lot of gold in that. At the time, developing one's self, it can be really confusing and chaotic. So that was my earliest start as an actress, not even being able to know how to name myself.
Well, I guess that being said, I guess you could say the kid saw mommy kissing Santa Claus.
Yes, that's yes, that's very true.
Um, I hope Mrs. Claus didn't find out.
Yeah, because I can imagine that if she did that, she would have claustrophobia.
Either that or congratulations, mommy made Santa a sleazeball. All
Well,
right.
then in that case, I sure hope I didn't ruin your elf esteem.
No, you did not.
All right. Well, so anyway, I agree. You've been growing up in a small town that's actually, since I've lived here, growing.
Mm-hmm.
But I know what it's like to have the parents, especially. I hate saying the term "broken home" because it just sounds so like, no, it wasn't broken. I mean, the parents worked together, but they did what they did, and living paycheck to paycheck. I remember going to the grocery store once a month, and that was our food for the month because my dad worked for the city. So, but city paid outright wages, but always doing what he could to survive for us kids, buying and selling stuff and all the other stuff. So, Eric, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I have been in Billings my, yeah, I've been in Billings my whole entire life, and I mean, yeah, and then pretty soon yeah, like as Mary knows and Ty knows, I'm gonna be moving to Atlanta, Georgia. That's definitely a pretty big change. But hey, but I mean, a lot of times people are scared of change, but honestly, change actually can be what's best for us. And I mean, I'm not saying that people have to go move to Atlanta, Georgia, but it's just that, it's just sometimes, but I mean, sometimes people need that change.
Yeah,
Well,
they do. And recognizing, like you said, very good point, that change can bring good things.
mhm,
And there definitely was a lot of change growing up, uh, as my parents navigated some, I wouldn't say poverty situation, but they were on food stamps. I mean, it definitely shapes you. It also shapes your brain, and
mhm,
also a small town can shape your brain. And as as a person goes through life, one would hope the experiences that you have in the world would allow you some perspective
mhm,
and the ability to grow that perspective,
mhm,
so that your worldview expands. Um, but yeah, the earliest start, I think, it's really important for an artist to acknowledge their roots
Oh yeah.
and
right.
at the very earliest starts of it. So an artist can begin to map out that constellation of growth and accomplishment, and definitely where your belly flops are and what things you can learn from those.
Mhm. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, when I say this town's growing, it's more growing in a factory setting, and I don't, to the point, my life where I'm if I can find something better, I'm hoping to move to Atlanta with Eric, but kind of hard to move when the bank account doesn't like you. But
Mhm.
um, but no, and I'm to the I don't want to do a factory job because it's a lot of it you know working with the heavy equipment and everything, and with I'm very accident prone, so like I'd be the guy that hey, there's my finger, so. And I get it though, but it shapes you though, how you grow up, because there's, I mean, think about it. Henry Ford, before he made Ford Motor, was just tinkering around with cars, and he knew that there was a better way to basically make the assembly line, and that's what all businesses operate now on, and to some extent, is the assembly line. It takes those small people to shape the entire landscape, So.
Yeah, some very thoughtful observations. Yes, and I
Mhm.
definitely agree. Every piece of our growth and discovery as artists, and I would say actually in life, because if the two aren't intertwined, I don't know how you can be a full-fledged artist, not being in a full-fledged human life and figuring out, your town, your growth,
Right.
how that impacts you.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, certainly so. And so yeah, so I also saw that you're with Rocky Mountain Agency, and so I was just wanting to know how exactly. So yeah, I was just wanting to know just how exactly that ball got rolling.
I had been searching for an agent for a while, and I had been doing a good number of what might be called cold calling, but only cold emailing, reaching out to agents in LA. And I started that process just before the strike started. And the responses I kept getting back, the strikes, the strikes, the strikes, not now, not now, not now. And um, I also got some really interesting negative no's,
Mhm.
which are always fun for the backpack of stories. So, yeah, after the holidays, after the strikes got over, I started looking closer to home. And the Rocky Mountain Agency had been purchased and under new management by Carly. I reached out to her and I set up a meeting letting her know it's like, I'm really interested in more film work. And the definitely in Montana, the greater Northwest, and also reaching as far out as I can. And she was willing to have a conversation, a Zoom. We had a couple of conversations back and forth. She looked at my materials and said yes. She said yes to the dress, and I said yes to her dress, and that's how we connected. And I've had several auditions. I'm pretty newly signed with her, so we're still navigating, getting to know each other, and where I'm a good fit for projects.
Well, what would
Awesome.
be? Yeah. Well, what would be your dream role then?
Dream roles for me have a lot to do with story, the parameters of a story, where me being female and also over 40, there are stories I believe that I would be drawn to for women who are exploring maybe a second phase of life. And that could be something like I've always envisioned myself as an adventurer because I snowboard. And I mean, I've headed way back in the not necessarily backcountry, but I will find as far back on the ski slopes as I can to take my board riding. And I'm also trail jogging and biking. So the idea of being like a Born Identity series, I've all three of those DVDs and I watch them. I love the idea that there is a kind of a detective of sorts. So that would be a dream role of one type of it. Another type, I think they should bring back the 90s rom-coms. I love romantic comedy. One of my favorite movies is As Good as It Gets.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Now,
that's a good. One of my favorites is, now maybe it's just being a guy and Reese Witherspoon, but I like Sweet Home Alabama. That's a good one.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like Josh Lucas. I think he's a very underrated actor.
So yeah, and for the movie As Good as It Gets, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the right movie. Are you talking about the one that had Jack Nicholson?
Born Identity series had Matt Damon in it.
Yeah.
Well, no,
As Good as It Gets.
Oh, As Good as It Gets. Yes, As Good as It Gets. Yes, that's Jack Nicholson, Helen Hunt. There's Cuba Gooding Jr. in it, and then Greg Kinnear.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, but it's no. I mean, I do agree. I mean, I think being a teenager, we're like, Eric, you could say I don't like rom-coms, but now it's like you kind of watch them. You know what? There's nothing I like. There's nothing wrong with a good rom-com, and plus, it's a good date movie too. So
yeah, it's a good date movie, and I love As Good as It Gets because you're taking 3 or 4 characters that normally maybe aren't in each other's world, and you're throwing them together, and the dialogue is smart and snappy, and the characters are so well directed. And that movie, it encompasses life with witty dialogue and real situations that the characters navigate their way through.
But Helen Hunt, it doesn't matter what she does, even if she wins an Oscar for as good as it gets, she'll always be Joe from Twister to me. So
yeah.
Even though that movie, you can that movie's not accurate to tornadoes. As somebody who is from Kansas,
Definitely not.
You can't stand 10 feet from a tornado, expect not to get caught in this. Yeah. And I hate to break it to everybody, the suck zone does not exist. That's not a scientific term. All this other stuff. I've heard all the things about that, but Twister is still one of those movies that in Kansas, we have pretty much people only have 2 favorite movies. It's either Twister or Roadhouse. And so, and then that's a stereotype with Kansas. People say, "What do you guys do about tornadoes?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me like about how Montana has like this stereotype too, and Mary probably relates that. I've even had people ask me if I ride horses over to work. It's like, no.
Yeah, no.
Well, so what I told the person when there's tornadoes, we just find a ratchet strap and ratchet strap ourselves to the tree. on tight. Because plus, I've only seen a tornado like I've never really actually seen one. They've come close to my house, but not exactly like that close. We don't get that many tornadoes, people. So, and like, but no, I mean, and we talked about Oscars earlier. What did we like to ask the guests? But when you win one, what would your speech be?
What would my speech be? I would be deeply grateful to the director and the cast and the crew that believed in me to work with me. And hugely grateful for all of my experiences here in Montana. They have allowed me to grow. They have allowed me to heal. They've allowed me to express myself, find myself as an artist. And yeah, I've worked with a lot of people that I would have a long list of thank yous that I would want to make sure that I brought people into the light along with me. I think that's really important.
Well,
yeah, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, reminds me of a quote. I forget who said it, but I think it was Helen Keller. Helen Keller said, "Alone we can do so little, but yet when we unite, we can do so much."
So true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very, very prevalent. But yeah, no, I mean, that's one of, I mean, and you look at all the actors though, that didn't make it until they were much older. Like, I mean, Boris Karloff was 45 years old before he got a leading role. Bela Lugosi was 49.
Right.
Yeah, and also, another really good example is that Tobin Bell. He, as far as I know, since that I had the pleasure to meet him, he told me that he didn't start acting until he was in his 40s, and then it wasn't until when he was in his 60s, like when he was Jigsaw in the original Saw. It wasn't until he was in his 60s, like when he finally made it. And so, it really goes to show you only fail only when you stop trying.
Mm-hmm. Amen on that one. Yes.
Yes. Look at Socrates here. Yeah. Yeah. Look at you, Socrates.
But yeah. So then in that case, I guess you can say you saw that one coming.
Yes, indeed, for sure.
But
I do believe that you're onto something, though, when you're acknowledging people where their success might have really blossomed out larger. Even most recently with the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes were offered to many women that were over 50. Demi Moore is over 60, and that was her first Golden Globe for the movie Substance. I mean, she's been rocking out in her acting career for 40 years. And I believe...
I'm sorry.
What's it? I believe it's a great inspiration to stay in the game.
Yep.
Well,
and I believe... sorry. I just have the worst timing about that. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Okay, so I believe even Jamie Lee Curtis recently won an Oscar or something.
Yeah,
like
Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Yes.
Yeah, and I believe that she's in her 60s or 70s now.
Yeah.
Almost 70.
Almost 70, yeah. Well, the thing about what made, the thing to me, that Oscars was a very interesting Oscars to watch after what happened before that. But it was, that Oscars is very interesting to watch because so many people won that it's like, wow, this is what movies are made out of, I mean, like, and Jamie Lee Curtis, her speech, what made it special at the end, because now that both her parents have passed, she looks up and says, "Look, Mom and Dad, I won an Oscar," and that was just like that special moment. And like Jonathan Key Kwan, or Key Kwan, I'll always know as Jonathan Key Kwan, short round, and Data. I never would have thought in my wildest dreams that Short Round would have won an Oscar. And for, you know, a movie that I will admit I liked, but it wasn't my cup of tea. But I appreciated the movie. But I'm like, I was proud of him because it's like, what, not acting in 20 years? What a huge risk. Because not acting in 20 years almost, you're going back into acting, and then you win an Oscar, and now you're becoming an action star. And I think he has a new movie coming out in February. So
Yeah, I saw that, and
That's
he's
wow.
the lead actor in that, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow,
and
I
like,
had no idea about any of that. And I mean, talk about a redemption story.
yeah, and then think about this way: who's handing him the Oscar? Harrison
Wasn't it?
Ford.
Yeah,
Harrison Ford, a kid who he met what, almost 30 years, 40 years before that, and
Hmm.
he's handing him an Oscar. Like, that was that magical moment. It's like, wow. And that's what I loved about that Oscar, is it felt like, you know there's something here, because they're giving it to women that are, not, the 18-year-old supermodel.
Hmm.
And
I think the awards, looking at the awards as a way of opening up the conversation more. And
mhm,
it's been long overdue, long overdue. We need representation across the board for every age, every color,
mhm.
every
Yes.
spirituality. When I go out into my world, I love seeing diversity around me, and I appreciate now that it's even showing up more on screen. I know we have a ways to go, but
Well,
going in a good direction, though. We can encourage that.
yes. Well, and I say what I've always said is, be diverse for the right reasons. Don't be diverse just to get a cookie. So,
yeah.
because that's what I've always said, and sometimes we do that. But if be diverse because it's the right thing to do, not to get your little cookie. Like, remember in school we got brownie points? They were fake brownies, because I remember in the school sitting there saying, raising my hand, "Where's my brownie?" So, um, so, but it's I I like the way the industry's changing, and everything. I think it could be good for the better. I mean, we just it just we need to have that one movie, like, we basically right now, I think we just need to have our new Star Wars moment in the
Mhm.
theaters right now.
I mean, I could argue in a way that Barbie, with like the whole Barbenheimer craze. I just cannot talk today. The Barbenheimer craze. I argue, well, like that. Maybe we did with that. I mean, considering that some of the people who I know, like who are in LA, some of those people are saying, yeah, we expected Barbie to be a hit, but not that big of a hit.
Yeah, I mean,
And
yeah, I mean, I think the what makes has made Star Wars so more relevant to a lot of people is the rewatchability.
yep.
Um, I am just saying this from my own personal thing. Personal. I don't know if I ever see myself rewatching Barbie or Oppenheimer again. That's just my personal thing, and it's nothing to do with whatever people are going to say in the chat here. But it's just personal preference. I like more action, and maybe I like drama, but, like, I think especially with Oppenheimer, you kind of be in that right mood to watch it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's a long movie. And now I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that for that reason, I can see it not being everyone's cup of tea, and
But
that I
and
also can understand that not everybody would
and
have that time.
Yeah,
and
for sure, for sure.
and just Barbie in general. I mean, it's just, not my style of a rom com. I don't want just what I don't even know how to explain it. This is why this is
That
this is why I quit reviewing movies, because it's like it just wasn't my cup of tea that day, and I've seen it multiple times, but no, but anybody who likes it, awesome. So
Yeah.
It's a testament to women raising up women's stories, and I
yeah,
believe that was the real sparkle behind it. Is women raising up women and women's stories, and that
yeah.
women can do it. I've been reading how in that early phases of that movie there was a lot of no's, and and some of it had to do with the fact that they didn't think women could carry that story that far.
Well, and
And
plus,
so,
people need to realize too. There's a book that a lot of people should read. It's by Alicia Malone. Here I am, a big fan of hers, and I'm trying to think of the name of her book, but it's like, I think it's a book she wrote about the history of women in films,
mm,
and it's a fascinating book. You know, and it talks about how she talked about like how the inventor of the boom mic was a woman.
Oh yeah.
really?
And yes, and it was basically she wanted to always take credit. Now she did, but she didn't want to use her real name just because she was private. That's
Mm.
at least what she said. I'm only basing it on what she said in her book.
Mm.
So anybody who's but they always the studios, because she basically saved the sound industry and was used by all major studios. She got a pretty good commission, and along with her husband, because they became good business partners. It is not a case like of, he took more money and anything else. Her husband made sure she got a good amount of money, but she just never wanted credit for it because she just was private, and
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
and there was a lot of female directors back in the early silent era. That's what she talks about, and it it's a great book that a lot of people should read, because I actually, I know I like Alicia Malone, as Eric knows, when we go to Atlanta,
Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
even though I think she's in Connecticut, I'm like, we have to visit Turner Classic Movies, so at least we could talk to Alicia Malone,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I find her story inspiring. I mean, she grew up in nowhere, Australia,
Oh yeah.
nowhere, Australia. Got a job, didn't go to college, got a job at TV, got her a green card to move to LA, and just started working the junkets, and now she's working for Turner Classic Movies. So I mean,
Yeah, everybody's path is so unique, and that's one thing. As I observe fellow artists and fellow humans, but particularly for me, the fellow artists, each individual artist has their very special path that they trailblaze, that they carve, and it's populated with people and experiences that are very unique to that person. And I really appreciate watching people like what you just spoke about. They carve their path, they craft their path, they make their mark, they offer their talent and their skills to make something better.
mm-hmm. Well, Eric, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, and to the whole thing about hearing people's stories and and how they got to where they're at. I mean, I just feel like that it really humanizes said person, and I feel like that there's things that you can learn from their story, um, just so then that way that you can apply it to yours.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Sometimes we learn vicariously, not
Yeah,
to repeat things that don't have good endings, and we can also experience joy from
Yeah.
other people's journey, truly cheering them on and truly being happy for them.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, I think one of the things, like Eric kind of, I guess now would be, Eric. Now I think, she kind of shared a little bit of her story and everything. We could share a little bit of our stories, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I've shared a little bit here and there of my story on Facebook. And I saw that Mary reacted to some of it. But yeah, I mean, but yeah, I guess to all those watching who haven't heard, originally I was going to do paleontology, but then I severely underperformed when I did mineralogy in college. And oh gosh, I will never forget just how overwhelmed I felt. And then when I failed that class, I was like, well, I guess I was at crossroads with my life. I was like, you know, what am I going to do now? I always wanted to get into entertainment, but I guess I just didn't believe in myself. And then that was when I met that friend of mine who worked on Jurassic World. I had no idea that she even worked on the Jurassic World movies. It wasn't until one day her and I video chatted for the entire night. It was when she dropped. It was when like she dropped that ball on me. I was like, wait, are you pulling my leg or are you being serious? And then she showed me pictures of her on set with like Chris Pratt, and so then that was proof that she was being serious. I was like, okay, you're being serious. And
Mhm.
yeah, and she was honest. She was like, Eric, you would be a lot better at filmmaking than you would be at paleontology. And she was saying that I should just make paleontology a hobby of mine. It was
Mhm.
hard to hear that, but then it was my lifelong dream to get connected to Jim Carrey, and luckily for me, some say it's by chance, some say it's coincidence. I guess it depends on what it is that you believe. But she actually met him over at Museum of the Rockies, since that back when COVID hit, Jim was wanting to get away from like the crazy crowds, and so Jim bought a ranch somewhere in Montana. And then, once when COVID started to die down, Jim made a visit over to Museum of the Rockies, and my friend happened to have been working there and happened to have met him there. And then when I told her, yeah, you know, uh, Jim Carrey's one of my heroes. I would love to meet him or get connected to him in any way. She, and then she vouched for me, and then Jim sent me that signed picture, and hearing a little bit of Jim's story about how he got to where he's at also inspired me,
Mm-hmm.
and the rest is the rest is history.
That
Um,
is awesome.
yeah, well, with mine, um, you know, I was always kind of the movie buff kid in, you know, school and family.
I also
Um,
was.
well, and then yeah, and then I, there was I had this aunt who was, and obviously since I'm talking about her in past tense, she has passed away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
She was always that aunt that just believed in you no matter what, and just that one person in your family that um, has the that just when they're gone, there's a light that will never. There's a burnt out light that'll just no, it doesn't matter how if you get a new light or anything, that light just won't go. That's basically her. And then my the month after that, not even a month later, my grandpa passed away. This was her dad, and they were always just the people that inspired me and everything. My grandpa, always believed in me, and my aunt did too. It was to the point where I could have we kind of the plan after high school was maybe to go, since she lived in New Jersey, to go to New York, because she lived about 30 some 20 minutes away from New York, and maybe try to go to college in New York and everything, but it just didn't work out and everything. But I never then I kind of tried to work the safe job for 4 years, working tree work and all that other stuff, and then my boss moved on me, and I'd still be working for that guy if he didn't move. But and then I've just kind of gone from job to job to job. But it's like, I think whatever you want to say it is, you just have that entertainment bug, and you
Yep.
know, and I will say this: having my nephew, really changed a lot because it's like, man, you know what? I want to be what he was to my aunt and uncle, who, because both of them have passed away since now, and I want to be
Sorry.
kind of, well, don't be sappy, dude. Shut up. um, I want to be that, favorite uncle, because that aunt would be the aunt. Hey, presents aren't everything, but when you're a kid and you get that brand new red bike at Christmas, it means so much to the kid at that time. I want to be that uncle for my nephew to afford that, and that kind of was. And I realized I wanted to be a director or an actor, but then when people were kind of honest saying that, yeah, you're not a director, I kind of realized maybe my talents more lie in. I realized my heroes more in the industry were the Louis B. Mayers, the Walt Disneys, the guys who owned the entire studio, but
Yeah.
who had who had charisma galore, So
Yeah, we just keep finding our way, and I think that is the nature of artists, regardless of where you end up, whether you're in the tech side of it, the in front of the camera, it's the journey, and that probably sounds a little bit cliche. It's continuing the journey and continuing to unfold the story, making the choices to bring experiences to you, and also make opportunities as well.
Yep.
I've never showed this on the podcast, but yeah, just rest in peace, Aunt Sherry and Uncle Mike. So
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
they and but it's interesting that the you know I guess I heard so I can't remember who said it, but your life is a book, so make it a great one. you know.
Yeah.
Did a great
Yeah.
one. Yeah. With me and my acting journey, it's funny coming from, I don't know if I can blame a small town or necessarily when you're, as I was speaking earlier, when your family is navigating a lot of very poor circumstance, the artistry for me it fell into my view and then fell out. It fell into and out. And it wasn't until my early adulthood,
Mhm.
once I got out on my own, that I really had the wherewithal to make some conscious choices about where I was putting my time and energy. And a friend of mine said, "Hey, what do you think about auditioning for the local community theater?" And every light bulb internally of energy went, brrr. It's like, wow, that sounds like a
Yep.
great
Right.
idea. And that began more or less my artistic journey. I had a brief stint of modeling right before that. I was at the tail end of what would be the supermodel era, and I'm not 5'9" or 5'10" and 100 pounds. So there was still a lot of rejection going
Yeah.
on for women of varying sizes or ages.
Well,
So I took that kind of as a belly flop at that point, and that's when my friend said, "Hey, let's go audition together." And that was the beginning
mhm.
of me finding
Well,
where my joy was. And I stepped onto stage, and this sense of, oh, I'm home.
mhm.
Your spirit, soul said, I'm home. And I thought, what can I do to light this place up? And I've taken every script that I got from my early days in community theater, and that's exactly what I did. And at one point, I connected with a fellow thespian there in the community theater world who wanted to open a black box theater. And I joined him and several other people, and we had a pretty good run, about 7 or 8 years. The black box theater we were ahead of our time, which kind of, I always hear my grandmother's voice, "You're a child born ahead of your time." I thought, oh, great. That's great. I'm always like ahead of what might be coming. So people don't
Right.
know what to make of me when I show up.
Mhm.
That black box theater taught me so much about wearing different hats. It was a small, intimate theater, which seated about 35 people ish, and we had varying size crowds. we took on a lot of material, though, that was not like mainstream. That is where I really learned about the different aspects of an artist, where you look at the shadow parts of yourself, you look at the more light filled ones, and learning how to take those parts and meld them together to bring them to life in a character. And I really appreciated that early black box theater journeying. And when that closed due to financial reasons, I was homeless as an artist. I finally got my feet underneath me as like getting some gusto moving forward. And when it closed, I thought, oh gosh, now what? You know? And I kind of was flailing for a while. I was writing poetry and checking out ceramics, taking other ancillary type artist activities, painting. And then one of my friends, again, you have conversations with people like we're doing now, gives you the ideas. And she said, you should take your theater skills and mold it into film acting. And I thought, yes, I should. This sounds like a great idea, And honestly, one of the first films that left a really indelible mark. And I will always remember watching this film. I was being babysat one day, and I don't know if they just put in the movie and like let me watch TV by myself, but I was watching the movie Cat Ballou, starring Jane Fonda. And she was running from the bad guys, and she'd somehow gotten herself into the proverbial room, like, okay, there's no way out except the windows. And so she throws up the window, she dives out, and I went, oh, I want in that world. I want to do what she's doing. And again, it's referencing that background I grew up in. And I'm only putting this together now as I'm older. When you grow up in poor circumstance where your nutrition might be not up to speed, and there's chaos because your family's trying to find the money to exist, your brain gets wired in such a way that it takes time to refresh that wiring and then learn how to point it in a direction that your soul wants to make sense out of, or most want to make sense out of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, looking back on that, I didn't have any process. Oh, I didn't know you had to audition in order to do that. As silly as it sounds, when you grow up in poor circumstance, and sometimes like really small town, a lot of people they'll collect together and do a lot of the same things. And when I want to do this thing over here and no one else was doing it at the time, I thought, well, how do I do that? And my young adulthood, that's where I discovered how do I do that? And it was a lot of trial and error, stopping one thing, starting another, finding myself, like I said, homeless as an artist between my theatrical world and then bridging that into my film world. And since then, I've really stuck it out. I thought about making a move to LA. With me raising daughters, it was really important for me to model having a strong home for them.
Right.
And that's what caused me to stay in Montana. And I started reaching around, again, having conversations. There was a few film festivals happening, making my presence known and volunteering. I didn't even get cast in films right away. I went to the film festivals to volunteer so I could have those conversations about process and how to move forward. And when you have one opportunity and you're able to fulfill on it and complete it, like volunteering at a film festival, someone, hey, I remember you. You were such a good person to work with. I'm working on this short film. Would you be interested? And then being able to say, yes, that sounds like something I can do, and start collaborating with many different groups of people, which has led me over a decade now to have, I've starred in 7 independent films. 3 of them are out on Amazon Prime. I've starred in a number of professionally done short films. All of these independent films and short films have been on, what your viewer might not know is, besides watching film in theaters and on television at home, a lot of artists make their way in what's known as a film festival. And film festivals are wonderful ways to go support artists. If you are in a town that has one, track it, go see your artist voices that are growing and being built. And through the film festival circuit, many of my films have won awards of varying sizes and natures, from directing to cinematography. For myself, I've garnered a Best Supporting Actress for a classic film titled Wuthering Heights. I also recently won Best Actress on a short film I did. It's a romantic comedy. It's also out on YouTube called
Awesome.
Swing. So maybe when you put together your rest of your drop-in links, I feel free to grab those from me, Eric.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, it's continuing to say yes on your journey to things that are a fit for what you're envisioning your future to be like. And I think that's a really important thing to know, to note on your journey, where your yeses are going and where your nos are, because your nos actually create space, and your yeses start filling that space with experiences that you hope leads you to the next thing.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of actors and a lot of people in the movie industry in general, you know, a lot of them like have dealt with rejection and dealt with getting no's. That's even something that I dealt with. But you know, but what I learned, and probably what a lot of other people can testify as well, is that every no brings you closer to your yes.
Well said.
And one of the things with even with this conversation, I've kind of thought about it too. You know, I've always been has had a family that it has been surrounded by artists, but I think that I want to say that they were more wanter artists, if that makes sense. You know, they could paint very beautiful paintings. Like if I showed you some of the paintings that they painted, you would sit there and say, "Wow." But they always looked at it more as a hobby. Meanwhile, I think there are some artists that just is like, this is what they were put on the planet to do, you know?
Yeah. I had some family around me, as you mentioned that in my early years. I remember my Uncle Curtis. He liked to play his ukulele. I mean, he would entertain the kids. And once in a while, my dad would pick up and strum a guitar. I was lucky enough to have such a vibrant and animated family on both sides of my mom and dad's family. But I do remember my Uncle Curtis really stood out to me as being very charismatic and joyful. And I saw him at a family reunion, God rest his soul, recently, because he's my godparent, one of my godparents as well. I was listening to his story, and I wish that I'd gotten more of it. He started, one of his first jobs was a circus barker. He'd go out in front of the circus when it was happening. It's like, hey, come to the circus, and get your tickets. I love those seeds that they land in your spirit and eventually take blossom. Even in the smallest ways, they land in your spirit. And I love.
Sorry. Speaking of the circus, that's my local circus. One time the local circus. It was traveling, but I told my mom that, wow, they're looking for a ringmaster, So Eric can tell you, I'm actually probably a pretty bold guy. Like, sure, I'll go for it, and I applied to be the ringmaster. Needless to say, I didn't get it because here I am stuck in Kansas. But no, I thought, man, that would be fun, introducing the clowns, the animals, and all that stuff. I mean, come on, Eric, being the ringmaster would be a fun job, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it has a real ring to it.
Yes.
Or even ring mistress would be cool too. So I don't, that would be fun. I think it would be fun, because, and by the way, for people who sit there and say, oh, well, the animals and everything else, the traveling shows, I get it. See, I have a way to solve the problem. What if you had a stationary circus, but you treat it like how they treat Animal Kingdom at Disney World, where it's basically it's a sanctuary, but yeah, the animals can still perform and do all their shows and everything else, because, man, going to the circus was so much fun as a kid, wasn't it, Eric?
Oh, it was, yeah. And I definitely do remember going as a kid. It was inside of, like those giant tents that they would have it in. I
Yes.
just don't remember where it was at, but I definitely do recall seeing
So,
giraffes and all that.
mhm. So did Uncle Curtis work for Barnum and Bailey, or is it just a local circus?
It was probably a local circus based in Minnesota. But it could be. I mean, it was northern Minnesota. Probably unlikely because I would imagine Barnum and Bailey would be more big time circus, probably in the Twin Cities. And I was born in northern Minnesota, and
Well, I mean, but no, for us it was the Shrine Circus,
yeah,
and it did get to the point where eventually we just didn't go because the whole it was the same thing every year, but we did go every year with grandpa, and that was always fun. And I remember I remember there was a guy who was selling pickles, and he sat there and said, "These are the tastiest pickles ever." And as he eats his own product and everything, Grandpa, and I even remember how cheap pickles were back then. For there, you could get a pickle for a quarter.
cool.
I mean,
Definitely can't get them that cheap nowadays.
no, are you kidding? um, but no, I, um, and I did go to Barnum and Bailey once. They came to Kansas. We went there, and I remember my dad. Hear me being the big Indiana Jones fan. They were selling whips. And I'm like, Dad, can I get a whip? And they were real whips.
Yeah.
And my dad sit there, sure. The look on my mom's face.
Mm.
When Dad got the whip, I don't know. I think she was thinking about using it on him because she gave him that look like, uh-oh. But
Oof.
but yeah, I only whipped myself a few times with it on accident, of course. But I still have that whip too. So
Well, I sure hope that you didn't accidentally give yourself a scar, similar as to what happened during the opening of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
I was always like very careful with it.
Good.
I
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, and we had my dad did. Both parents definitely gave the rules with the whip. Don't use it on your brother and sister,
Hmm. Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
being a kid, don't use it on the animals.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe and try to whip cans or something that's not going to hurt other things. My dad did say, now maybe you could attempt to, because we grew up hunting and everything. Maybe you can attempt to whip the birds, but good luck.
Are
But
you guys working on anything right now that?
Yes, we are actually.
Yeah.
So him and I got inspired by. So I don't know how you feel about horror movies, but I mean, regardless, is there a market for it? Yes, there is.
Oh
So
yes, there is.
so yeah, we got inspired by Winnie the Pooh. I'm not sure if you were aware, went into the public domain a few years ago, and then when that went public domain, there actually were a group of filmmakers who took advantage of that, and they turned it completely upside down, made it into a horror movie, and it was made for like what, 50 grand to 100 grand, and it made $7 million worldwide. And then me and Ty were like, okay, clearly that there is economic value with taking advantage of a public domain property. So one day me and Ty were just brainstorming ideas about, okay, what's an intellectual property that is not under copyright that we could take advantage of. We almost were going to do a Dr. Dolittle horror movie, since that the original book and not any of the movies actually is in the public domain, but we decided against that because all the just the budget
Mhm.
that it would require for all the animal effects would skyrocket. We thought, how about let's do something cheaper? So Sarah Karloff, who's the daughter of Boris Karloff, she was the first guest who we ever had on, and I was wanting to ask her questions that nobody asked her before, and then I saw that her her father's iconic Frankenstein movie actually is going to go public domain in 2027. So I asked her for her thoughts on that, and she gave her thoughts. And so afterwards, me and Ty got that light bulb above our head. We're like, wait, Dracula and Frankenstein are already in the public domain since that, before Universal made the iconic movies, that they're based off of books, and those books have been public domain for the longest time. But out of all versions of Frankenstein, it's the Boris Karloff version that comes to mind, with the flat head and the bolts on his neck. And the Bela Lugosi Dracula, that goes public domain the exact same year. So we thought, okay, let's have it be a legacy sequel to those two movies, since that those will be public domain. So let's do Dracula versus the Frankenstein monster. And we do have the Frankenstein monster cast. He's an actor named Daniel Gilchrist, who's in Kansas. He's 7'7".
Wow, that's a very tall man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's
Yes,
why he is perfect.
Yes, and Guinness Book of World Records should actually be funding this movie. So I know you guys totally watch Sit Down by the Fire. So if you guys do, write the check.
Yeah.
Because we have broken the record for the tallest actor ever to play the monster, and we are as close as we can get, because he's actually the tallest actor in the world right now. We're as close as we can get to the book, because in the book, Frankenstein, the monster, was 8 foot tall. So therefore,
Pretty close.
Eric, we can give him 3 inches.
We could, yeah. I mean, easily with the boots. And it's rather ironic that we were inspired by the Winnie the Pooh horror movie, because I'm actually good friends with Nikolai Leon, and Nikolai actually played Christopher Robin in said movie, and we actually cast him as a descendant of Dr. Frankenstein. So yeah, and so I guess you can call that a rather full, I guess it's like a full circle thing, like where we were inspired by the Winnie the Pooh horror movie, and yet we ended up casting one of the actors from said movie. So
Yes.
And as you're saying, coming full circle, I think I have a little bit of time left before I need to pop off to do a few things. One of my full circles right now is helping support the film industry growing here in Montana by being involved in the Montana Media Coalition. I think, Eric, have you heard of the Montana Media Coalition yet?
yes, yes, I have. I actually first found out about it from, I think it was from Diana. Diana, like, who was from Nova Vento. I heard
Yes.
about, yes, I heard about it from her over the summer, and then afterwards, I then went to a networking event down in Polson, where
Right.
they talked about it more. And yeah, down at the Polson event, like, was where I met Lynn Woods for the first time, and I met Brandon Smith for the first time, and I met Blake for the first time, and yeah, it really was at that networking event, like, was when I heard a lot more about the media coalition, and yeah, and I was supporting it as much as I possibly can.
You're a fantastic, Eric. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, and I also told Nikolai about it. I told a lot of my other people in my network about it, and yeah, and they all have been supportive about it, which I greatly appreciate it. And yeah, and I mean, even when I go down to Atlanta, I definitely am not going to forget about the Montana film community. I definitely will be sure to tell all the people who I meet in my network there, like, about Montana. And
Yeah, that's how we stay connected, and honestly start shaking hands through all of the state lines and sometimes cross country lines. I mean, it's how we connect artists to artists.
exactly, yeah.
All right. Well, I think we can, I guess, Eric, is there anything you want to add?
I guess, are there any upcoming projects that you would want the audience to be aware of?
Right now I have been auditioning. So I'm, putting the notes into the ethers and the universe. It's like, yeah, bring into those projects, and I'm going to knock it out of the park for and represent Montana and other artists that I'm in community with. So there's that going on. I do have a few films that are out on Amazon Prime if your viewers are interested to watch. I've got Wuthering Heights, which is a great classic that was filmed mostly here in Montana in a few different locations. We did grab some of our exteriors over in England to help tie the ribbon of the story together. There's also the film Useless, which is a great sort of Hallmark type film that was filmed up in northern Montana, up in Kalispell, which is on Amazon Prime. And the third one just came out and it's done really well on the festival circuit. I have a smaller part in that. It's called We Burn Like This.
Well,
What's that?
I just hope with that one, we won't feel useless watching it.
Yeah. or be wuthering the heights away,
That's amazing.
Yes. But thank you for the good humor. And yeah, those would be a few films. And if people are interested in my short films, I've got them listed out on my website. Go to gallery and they can go through and click through the gallery, like Swing, Homestead, Willow Creek Road. And I've got one other one that I just got put out there, but they're under my gallery. They're direct links to YouTube and they can watch those for free.
Oh, awesome. Well, Eric.
Well, I mean, Dracula versus the Frankenstein monster, plugged that in, and and if there's any way if there's any way that I could get Mary, a role in that, I definitely would love to. I just have to, go through the script and, and see who I think you would be best for. If not, we actually do plan on making it an entire cinematic universe. So, if not Dracula versus Frankenstein, maybe for like a follow-up film.
Yeah. Link elbows and hearts and create something in other film capacity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Eric, do you want to plug anything else?
It's really about it. So yeah.
Well, hey, plug. Definitely, get our merchandise at Pop Tees, and all that good stuff. And yeah. All right.
Alrighty.
Let me know ahead of time before you add me.
Hi, Taylor.